I use a lot of fragrances throughout the course of a month, but my current favorite fragrances are the ones I'm enjoying a bit more than the rest. Hi, welcome. Before I begin, a like on this video is highly appreciated, thank you, and make sure you subscribe. So I use a lot of fragrances throughout the course of a month and usually end up using anywhere from 1 to 4 fragrances a day. So I quite often get the question, so aren't your fragrances clashing throughout the day? And I pretty much answer that question in this video up here, so make sure you check it out. I really don't have any problems with fragrances clashing because most fragrances aren't that intense and that potent. But with that said, sometimes there's a bit of sort of an overlap, but I really don't see that as a bad thing, more as something quite exciting. If I have a fragrance with good performance, I sometimes get the dry down of that one mixed with the opening and the midst of the new one that I'm applying, and the combo often ends up being quite exciting. I've got a spraying routine video coming up finally, so make sure you subscribe for that. So lately I've been sort of transitioning from freshies to fragrances with a bit more depth to them. However, with that said, I pretty much use freshy throughout the year. So these are not all the fragrances I've been using lately, but some of those that I've been reaching for a bit more than the rest. So the first one is this thing right here. I started with a sample and ended up liking that sample so much that I bought a full bottle. Before I share what I think it smells like, I want to say that this is among those fragrances that I received the most positive comments about, and usually whenever I post a video about my favorite vanilla focused fragrances, this one pops up. Most of you guys seem to absolutely love it, and now I finally know why. This is Mercedes-Benz Club Black. It opens up with a bit of freshness together with vanilla and dries down to something that's basically a mix of quite a smooth dose of vanilla, quite a soft dose of incense, and everything is a bit sweet and ambery. The dry down is where I feel the whole thing turns into something that is more nuanced, a bit more exciting, and the dry down is really the part where I feel this shines the most. So I recently bought this, and this has quickly become one of my favorites. I've got a review of it coming up quite soon, so make sure you subscribe. I paid about 45 bucks for this, for 100 ml, which I think is really good. Let me know in the comments if you tried Mercedes-Benz Club Black and what you think of it. So next up we have this thing right here. This is Narciso Rodriguez for him Bleu Noir Parfum, and this is basically a fantastic dose of powderiness and woodiness. And this to me is something that is quite an elegant kind of fragrance with a prominent dose of sexiness to it. For him, Bleu Noir Parfum has similarities to Valentino Uomo Intense, and one way to sort of describe for him Bleu Noir Parfum is almost like if you took Uomo Intense and removed the vanilla, removed the sweetness and removed the leather, and instead replace that with quite a richer dose of woodiness, you would sort of get this. And I also feel Uomo Intense and this are extremely similar, however I do feel they are a bit different. I also know that some feel this is extremely close to Dior Homme Intense, and I really do not agree. With that said, if you absolutely love Uomo Intense, then I feel you will most likely enjoy this. And if you love iris, sort of a powdery iris focused fragrances, then this is a fantastic one. For him, Bleu Noir Parfum is one of the fragrances I've been reaching for a bit more than the rest lately. So it really doesn't matter what part of the year it is, I pretty much always have one of my YSLs as part of my sort of a rotation, and I'm currently enjoying Y Le Parfum a lot. Y Le Parfum, to me at least, is pretty much like they took a bit of Y the Eau de Parfum and made its aromatic side quite a bit sort of a richer and added a dose of fruitiness to it. Y Le Parfum has a fantastic mix of sort of a spicy and aromatic freshness with a dose of lavender, and everything is a bit sort of a slightly fruity sweet with apple. This is perfect for everyday use, and that's pretty much how I use most of the YSL Ys. Whenever I want something that is incredibly easy to wear and incredibly mass appealing, and something that just works to whenever, whatever occasion, then I spray something like this on. So next up, a fragrance from the scent line from Hugo Boss, and I've always enjoyed this. However, this has grown on me a lot lately. Like most of the fragrances in the scent line from Hugo Boss, this has that maninka fruit, and in this powdery, woody and leathery blend you have a bit of sort of a fruity sweetness from that maninka, and I really think it's the maninka together with the overall sort of a soft feel of this fragrance that makes it such a good one. So you got this combination of smooth leather, almost sort of a suede, together with quite a soft dose, quite a soft but prominent dose of woodiness, and everything is powdery in what I think is a fantastic way. This, by the way, if you compare it to the powderiness of Narciso Rodriguez for him, Bleu Noir Parfum, or Uomo Intense, or Dior Homme Intense, is very different. And I really feel I gotta do a review of the Scent Le Parfum. Now, I would absolutely love to know how you feel about this one. So from one powdery fragrance to another, and if you are a subscriber, then you know that I call Dior Homme Intense the one above all. This is absolutely gorgeous if you love quite intensely powdery fragrances that are also a bit sort of woody, and if you don't mind the kind of powderiness that is a bit sort of lipsticky. I believe it was like a year or so ago I bought a newer batch with a slightly different bottle. That 50ml is basically finished, and I actually bought that 50ml for two reasons. Why? To sort of not use my original bottle. Number two, to do a comparison of the sort of OG and newer batches. Let me know in the comments if you would like me to do a comparison of this bottle and newer ones, but like a quick one right here, right now. Newer batches are definitely Dior Homme Intense, but this had quite a bit of usage to it, so at least to my nose, this is a bit richer, a bit deeper, and a bit warmer. So from one of my fragrances for life to another, and this is, I mean, I absolutely love sweet tobaccos, and this is definitely one of the very best sweet tobaccos ever made. This is Parfums de Marly Herod, and quite soon after I bought my first bottle of it, I bought a backup bottle of it. Now, I have not compared this to newer bottles, so I have no idea what the differences are. This one, however, I absolutely love. Please do let me know in the comments if you feel there's a difference between newer batches and older ones. Incredibly rich, warm, spicy. You have a fantastic sort of a sweet tobacco and a bit of Parfums de Marly, sort of a signature vanilla. This to me is incredibly sexy, quite intoxicating, with something sort of elegant over it. If you are a bit like me in that you absolutely love well-made sweet tobaccos, then this is definitely something you should at least try out. So from one sweet tobacco to another, they are, however, very, very different. This, however, is something I feel is quite underrated, especially when you compare it to some of the other flankers. And this sort of simplified is almost like a fruity sweet version of the OG Spicebomb. Spicebomb Infrared, the EDT basically opens up with quite an intense dose of spiciness and then dries down to like a mix of fruity sweetness and tobacco. I think the EDT is absolutely gorgeous. I also think this is a great choice for fall. And if you love that sort of a Spicebomb DNA and think you would enjoy it in a more sort of a fruity sweet version, then definitely check this one out. I will be using infrared throughout fall and winter. So next up we have a fragrance that every single time I use it, I end up thinking, okay, why are you not using this more often? Because I absolutely love it, and every time I use it, I'm reminded of how absolutely beautiful this one is. But with that said, this is a fragrance I've enjoyed quite a bit lately. So the name of this is Agar Wood, and this is a fragrance from Dunhill. It's also, at least according to me, one of the very best from Dunhill. This screams niche. This smells better than a lot of niche fragrances out there. And like I said, the name is Agar Wood, but this, to me at least, is mostly about a super smooth leather together with a bit of sweetness and a warm sort of tobacco. And under that leather and the tobacco, you have a bit of oud and a bit of powderiness. What a beautiful scent this is. Now, if you tried Dunhill Agar Wood, I would absolutely love to know how you feel about it. So I've given Roma Intense a bit of a break lately, just a bit. and instead been reaching for choral fantasy a bit more lately. This has a bit of that sort of a Uomo DNA in it, but this to me is basically all about a warm and soft tobacco with quite a prominent dose of fruity sweetness to it, with an aromatic touch that's got a fantastic dose of lavender to it. The soft tobacco in here, this sort of a soft warm tobacco together with its fruity sweetness, is absolutely fantastic. And core fantasy is definitely, without a single doubt, among some of the easiest to wear tobaccos ever made. I'm pretty much rotating through most of my Uomos throughout the course of a month, but I've been definitely reaching for this a bit more lately. So the next fragrance I've been reaching for a bit more than the rest lately is this thing right here. Now this, at least in my comments, is a bit sort of a polarizing. When I wear this, this is definitely not something polarizing. This is an attention grabber that often gets compliments. However, in my comments, I often get someone saying like, okay, this is extremely feminine and I would never ever wear such thing. And that's okay, different noses, different tastes and all that. This to me, however, is perfectly unisex. This is Armaf Club de Nuit Untold, and this is basically Armaf's clone of the famous Baccarat Rouge 540. Are they exactly the same? And the answer to that is no. But this, at least to me, smells close enough, and I think it smells incredible. This is pretty much incredibly warm, spicy and woody with a fantastic dose of saffron to it. Now let's decide this once and for all. Come on, let's decide this once and for all in my comments. Do you think Club de Nuit Untold, i.e. Baccarat Rouge 540, do you feel it's a feminine fragrance? Do you feel it's a masculine fragrance? Or do you feel it's unisex? So after having used the OG Prada L'Homme quite a bit, I'm reaching for Prada L'Homme Intense a bit more lately. And this, in a way, is the slightly sort of a deeper and slightly, and when I say slightly, I really mean that, slightly warmer version of the OG Prada L'Homme. This is definitely not as fresh, however, I don't feel this is a super deep, super warm kind of scent. So you got an intense dose of powderiness together with what to me is quite a soft dose of woodiness, and everything is a bit ambery, and there's a soft hint of leather underneath it all. This is absolutely fantastic. If I would make like a top 12 of the very best powder fragrances in the world, Prada L'Homme Intense and the OG Prada L'Homme would definitely be in it. So I actually rotate between L'Homme Intense and the OG L'Homme throughout the year, but I do reach for L'Homme Intense a bit more during fall and winter. So next up, this thing right here, and this is a pretty strong fragrance, but strong in a soft way, if that makes sense. And what I basically mean with that is that this will definitely get you noticed, but it's not the kind of fragrance that will sort of punch you in the nose. And this is basically all about prominent and noticeable dose of soft and warm tobacco with a bit of spiciness, a bit of tonka, and that combo, that warm tobacco and the tonka, is absolutely fantastic. This is Montale Oud Tobacco, and yeah, there's only, at least to my nose, a tiny bit of wood in this. Now every now and then I get a comment asking me what do I think of Montale. I've been through a lot of samples and quite a few of them are fragrances that are just not my kind of fragrance. But among some of them are some absolute bangers, and Montale Oud Tobacco is one of them. So next up, this thing right here, and Scandal Le Parfum to me is pretty much like the woodier and less sweet version of the OG Scandal. It has some similarities when it comes to its sweetness, but this is definitely nowhere near as sweet as the OG. And to me, Scandal Le Parfum is pretty much like a mix of quite a smooth dose of sandalwood together with a bit of sort of a sweet and slightly warm vanilla that's a bit spicy. And whereas the OG Scandal is like this super obvious flirt that one is just flirting with you in a very obvious way. This takes slightly more sort of a subtle approach to that flirting. This is still flirting with you, and this is still a sexy scent, and much like the OG, but with a different kind of sexiness. Now, I know I'm late, but I finally bought the new Absolute, and really looking forward to doing a first impression of that one. So there you go, these are some of the fragrances I've enjoyed lately. Now, I would absolutely love to know if you have any fragrances in your collection that you've been reaching for a bit more than the rest.